Hello, hello.
Hello.
Well,
Ah,
we're live. We don't know where Matthias is, and we are having trouble streaming on Instagram, but we're streaming on Facebook and we're streaming on YouTube.
all right. I, of course, don't understand any of
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
uh, uh, anyway, well, okay, so all of this sort of started with Matthias, who's lost someplace in the internet. Um,
Oh,
because,
here he is.
there he is.
What happened?
We
There we
lost
go.
you. Modern
Yeah, I saw you in the waiting room. You would pop up and then you would disappear and then you would come back and then disappear but you're back. So,
Are we already live? Oh.
Yes.
yes.
Yes. In fact, I heard from my friend Mel, who said I'm watching. So we're in trouble.
So, you two can begin speaking, and I will keep trying to get us on Instagram. And if that's not possible, it's not possible, but I'll keep trying here.
Okay.
We are on your we are on Schott Acting
okay.
Studio Instagram Live. That's the only one we can seem to get on. But anyway.
So, I mean, like, the idea of having this conversation was because you were already here this year with a workshop. And we have another workshop coming April 2025. And we had many interesting conversations in between or before that we thought it would be a good idea to catch up and stream it live.
Yeah, we could catch up publicly.
Yeah.
Well, I was fascinated. First of all, I had such a great experience teaching in Berlin at your school. I'd never been to Berlin, and then I guess the great thing about your school is that the students were from everywhere. You know, the kid from Vienna, the guy from Slovakia, that fabulous woman from Amsterdam, the Berlin, and so I thought, wow, this is fantastic, and then of course, bless your heart, we had it a week this year. Next year, we're having it for 2 weeks, but of course, you're one of those weird people like me who just loves to talk about acting. And I think one of the things that interested me that in one of our conversations, you commented that casting directors were complaining that everyone was turning in the same performance. And that really alarmed me. And it alarmed me because, of course, of training that encourages actors just to play themselves. And I think you and I sort of agreed on this. And I think then I know where it led me is the catchphrase "You're enough," and it began to bother me, and then I about a month ago I taught in Marseille for a week, and I started by saying, what are your actor issues? What are the what problems do you have? And just consistently, everyone was talking about their training and the difficulty of training. And one of the guys said he'd taken a class from, well, we won't mention her name at the moment. I may get less kind later, and everybody had to go to their pain, and he said, and it was, he said, I had a problem. It's like I like my life. And so I thought, so apparently you can't be an actor unless you have this painful life. And of course, it was the beginning of this rather theatrical split in acting in America between Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler, which was very dramatic. And it has not stopped. I mean, the arguments go on and on and on, and about the use of your own life. And I even had a girl in my class who, when I gave an exercise about an imaginary vacation, and she said, can I do research, or is that cheating? And I thought, what is that? I mean, who are these people? Anyway, so how are you finding that? Because you're sort of in the center of Europe.
I mean, I probably have partly I have trained myself with using personal experience. And I think sometimes if an actor has a certain training, you can integrate it to your knowledge and your think. But I find it very critical when people starting out with immediately use their personal stuff. Because I think sometimes the imagination is so rich and it's not even really discovered before you immediately jump to personal things. And I think always we recommend like first using your imagination, and then if you want, you can add other things.
Yeah, I think my boy, and it comes up all the time. I think one of the issues for Stella, it was the idea that we're pulling the play down to our level rather than lifting ourselves up to the level of the play. And that I think is a big issue. It minimizes the importance of a play, and also it just limits you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a fascinating life, mind you. I'm old, but I can't imagine using my life. It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, even the good Strasberg teachers I had, and they said first you have to understand the play and the material, and not.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can add something which you can use from your personal life at a later state. But first you have to understand the essence. What is the play about? What are the relationships really? And not just jump to the cliche substitution or whatever. Like,
I think it's essential. I think it's one of the things that that I do think makes acting importantly smart, is that you start with, what is this a play about? And if you couple what is this a play about with the understanding that the idea is a big idea. One of the first classes I ever watched of Stella's, when I was just like watching, and there was a girl doing a scene from Doll's House, and she looked at this poor woman and she said, darling, she said, you're talking about one of the biggest concepts in human history, human freedom. And the way you're playing it, it's like you were talking about a sale at Bloomingdale's. And of course, for some of us, a sale at Bloomingdale's is huge, but that was kind of the point. And of course, she famously said to the actor who said, Hamlet's a guy like me. And she said to him, "Darling, Hamlet owns Denmark. You don't have a pot to piss in." But I think there is that. I think that there is that. And I think it's one of the reasons that we lose interest in plays. I mean, my God, I went on a tear because I saw a production of Waiting for Godot in Los Angeles last weekend. And it was just two guys chatting. And I thought, whoa, what are we missing here? I mean, it was like, and everybody in the audience kind of looked like, so why is this a great play? I don't get it. And that's what you miss. You miss it because there are no ideas there. I think it is interesting because I think what it helps you understand as an actor, the obligation you have to grow as a person.
Yeah, especially with young people, I think you have your whole life ahead of you. So why with 17 and 18 you would already go back to your childhood and all
I
these
know.
memories? So I rather encourage the curiosity, what they have and what they want from life, and who they want to fall in love with, instead of going back to all the old stories.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's what I said. I had an argument with a Strasberg teacher in New York who kept insisting how important that was. And I said, have you met these people? They're children. For exactly that. Remind me again, Matthias, and everyone watching. So when am I in Berlin again?
April, I don't know, is it 14 to 26? April 14 to 26, evening classes, 3 hours from 5:30 to 8:30. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
So 10 days, and I think then we plan to do the weekend, two Saturdays, longer Saturdays.
Good. Yeah, I think it's when I was teaching in Marseille, really made me realize the value of having more hours. We were really able to get to much more material, and I'm thrilled to be in Berlin for 2 weeks because I think we can cover so many more concepts.
There we go.
There we are. It's such a beautiful place. I must say, it's the fact that it's this wonderful studio, which is behind this coffee shop, and there's something about the actors getting together before class, and having a coffee and chatting about acting.
Yeah.
It's my kind of room. Walker, do we have any questions we should be addressing?
We do. We have several. So this is a comment. Einstein himself said imagination is more important than knowledge. Adler, having been married to a physicist, I'm sure appreciated this.
Yes. The thing about, I think how Stella used that was the idea that there are facts in every play, an endless collection of facts in every play. I mean, the facts include the time, the relationship to the partner, where it takes place. There's a difference between a play that takes place in New York and one that takes place in Berlin. All of these are facts of the play. And so what she encouraged us to do is take these facts and feed them through our imagination. And sometimes we do have to do research. I mean, sometimes, living in Berlin in the 30s, I mean, I'm obsessed with history, so I know about it, but somebody else might not be. And so, and they're doing a musical called Cabaret, and for some reason they think all they have to do is learn the music. But the fact of the matter is, you take these facts and you feed them through the imagination. And then what you get, which is the most important thing, I think, is the experience of the facts. And my friend Sharon Carnegie said she thought the most important word in Stanislavski was experiencing, which in Russian, my one word, perezhvanie. But so did Stella. And I think it's one of the reasons that, as you know, I'm a big advocate for talking out everything. Which we thoroughly enjoyed in your class.
Yeah. Is this an exercise you have from Stella Adler, or is it an exercise you invented yourself?
I invented the exercise. However, it was something that Stella had us do. It's funny. I was having a conversation with her grandson Tom about Stella, and I said, Stella did that in class. She never called it talking out, but that's what she did. And there would be all sorts of things. We were working on a play in the 1930s called Men in White. It took place in an emergency room of a hospital. And Stella said, I want you to talk out, tell me about the walk from your apartment to the hospital. And of course, what she was forcing us to do was not just to know visually what it looked like along the streets of New York, but in talking it out, it forced us, in a sense, to get the experience of it. As long as we could move out of just reporting. And I mean, that's the big issue. I think one of the problems that actors have is they mistakenly believe that just reporting the facts means they can play them. I have a new student that I'm working with from Montreal, and he said, yes, he calls all these teachers entrepreneurs, which I think is great. He said, they're just in it for the money. And he said, the last class I took, they gave us a form of 50 questions that if we answered the 50 questions about this character, that then we could play the character. And he said, the problem was, I did answer all 50 of them. He was that kind of, I would have changed classes. But then he said, by the time I got to the end of it, he said, I realized I couldn't remember what I'd done in the first place. And, but I discovered that. I discovered that really early on when I was teaching. And I realized that people were writing out things. And they were writing actions and on the scripts, and they had all these things they were writing out. And so what they were trying to do when they were acting was remember what they'd written down. And which, of course, it's almost like you want to, the thought is I should hand out my notes to the audience so they can see what I'm trying to do. But I mean, that was the thing that I realized, that talking out everything and talking it out as the experience, not reporting the facts, tells you a lot of things. I mean, not the least of which, when you're lying. And I think that's it. And a lot of times, actors catch themselves. I'm performing. I'm performing what I love. I'm performing what I hate, rather than actually loving it, actually hating it. But that was the reason I really liked that. I really found it was very liberating. And even with characters, just doing, a 1-minute monologue. I stole from my friend Deb Margolin the fill in the blanks I use at the beginning of every class. And I took a playwriting class from her at Yale. And one of the things that she would do is to suggest to the playwrights is to take a fill in the blank, like I envy people who, and use it as the beginning of a sentence that then became a 1-minute character monologue. And little things like that, just sitting for a minute and talking out how my character lives in the world, I think is enormously valuable, and certainly more valuable than writing out, or worse, thinking. I'm always amused how much better I sing than Sinatra in my head. I'm just going along, and I can hear myself. But anyway, people always seem to find that particular part of the work with me to be the most revolutionary, which makes no sense to me at all. But it's like, oh, I never did that before.
So this is from Mel. Can you speak about necessary specific details of a play or character, time and place are required in order for the theme to actually transcend that specific time and place and become universal?
Well, it's a brilliant question. It's so interesting. And I go back and forth a lot about themes. Sometimes I think I know for a fact, if I don't know what the play is about, I cannot make choices to pull me up to the level of the play. So it's that I know is important. The question is that then how much, as Mel asked, how much do I need to know in order to do that? And sometimes I guess maybe because I've lived for so long, I recognize themes right away. I know how big certain things are. I have a brilliant student from Ukraine in my class, and he's 18 and working on Seagull. And I said, and Trigorin. And I said, at 18, you cannot possibly understand what it is like for a 38-year-old, 42-year-old man who realizes that his life has no meaning. So, I mean, there are things that, although I said to him, you might be able to do it, but if you could do it, I don't want to know you anymore because it's too depressing. But you do keep adding and keep adding and keep adding. I mean, I think one of the mistakes that we make is not going back to the play. There is this idea that once I answered the question, then I've answered the question and I can go on and do the part. Whereas I think I have to keep going back and revisiting it. I mean, I may have an idea of what Death of a Salesman is about. If we use a play everyone should know, I may have an idea about what that play is about. But then the more I do work on it, the more I understand the play, then it becomes more important, and I understand more about the theme. I do think the important thing is, Stella used to say, if there's one woman, Nora is not about this one woman. If there's one Nora in Doll's House on stage, there are hundreds of women in the audience that have the same problems, that they have spent their lives having either their father's opinions or their husband's opinions. And sometimes I think it's just important for us to understand that particular piece of information, that's what we're representing.
So this is from Manu. What key skills or insights will students take away from your class in April? And for those who are just joining us, and by the way, we are now streaming, believe it or not, on fucking Instagram, on both our I Don't Need an Acting Class page and the Schott. Anyway, so if you're joining us there, welcome. Yes. So what and Milton will be teaching in Berlin in April, and we'll bring the flyer up in a bit. But anyway, what can people expect from that? Because it's 2 weeks.
Yes.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So there are kind of like 3 areas that we'll cover. First, we will cover some basic technique exercises, and it's really interesting. I stole this from somebody, and I thought it was so brilliant. They said advanced actors don't make advanced mistakes; they make beginning mistakes. And it is so interesting to me how many times you go back to just basic exercises, and they're exercises that I sort of over time have figured out are really important. I think it's important for actors to connect to what they're talking about. We do some exercises in that, and which is really the sophisticated word is experience what they're talking about. And that's why I do those beginning exercises. To connect to descriptions, to connect to building relationships with the partners. I mean, there's a school that does these endless repetition exercises, and the purpose of the exercises were to get you to live off your partner. But then what happens is you find yourself not living off the partner. So what I realized in this talking out is you're building an attitude towards the place. You're building an attitude towards the partner. And oddly enough, I always sort of think it's you can, well, I told somebody once that if you do my first 2 days of exercises, you know enough to work in any film. And then my student Sophie, after 1 day studying in Marseille, got cast the next day. So she proved my point. So there's a collection of exercises that are specifically technique exercises. The second sort of section of the work is script analysis. Script analysis is absolutely this vital part. Some people would call it table work. And it really is. How do I approach a text? There's not a person I know. I have a writer friend who says actors don't know how to read scripts, and I can't disagree. It's like reading a script and realizing that what you're supposed to do is not just get off book and figure out how to say the lines, but to really understand what is going on. And so that's another part of the work that we do. And then because we do have 2 weeks, uniquely, we will be able to do some scene study work, which was difficult to get to with only 1 week. I did find in Marseille, because I was teaching 8 hours a day, that by the last day, that's what we did, which is the reason you and I have added the long Saturdays, because then we can work on these concepts, we can work on things, and then put the concepts into, and this is how we use them. So I think the 2 weeks in Berlin will really help us.
Manu followed up just asking if there's any specific preparation you'd want students to do beforehand. This is a question we get a lot when we're about to begin a new class, and people will ask, what do I need to do to prepare? And it's a understandable, it's an innocent question, but one that if people had studied with you before, they would know that no, there's really nothing that you need to do except show up.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it gets to something, this idea that you have to, I don't know, prepare a performance of this whole mentality. Don't you think of like, I'm going to prepare a performance,
Yeah, yes. And of course, what we all know is it's like preparing a monologue. God knows how many people you could have work with you. I loved something that I learned from reading from Ilya Kazan's diaries. He stopped having auditions. And he stopped having auditions, and he said, because I can go to lunch with somebody and I know whether or not they can do the part and whether or not I can work with them. And I thought, of course, because people do an audition, and it's like, I mean, my God, I coach people on auditions daily. And so, they're kind of going in with my suggestion of their performance. So yeah, in answer to the question, there's no need to prepare anything. I like to think that we're just sort of all starting here, and you'll use what you can steal from what you had. You can, whatever. But that we're just layering in a way of working that really makes sense. It's funny. I was reading an interview in today's Guardian with Jude Law, and it was so interesting because it doesn't occur to you that somebody like Jude Law, who's a movie star, and he was talking about how he worked, and I thought, wow, he works the same way people work. He spends time with it, and he was aware that different parts require something different from you, which is difficult. The idea that there's no right way to do everything. And that was one of the things that I actually hit on. Reason I love teaching is because every time I work with students, I learn something. And one of the things that I learned last week in Marseille was one of the students, Sophie, who's now in my online Zoom class, but she had an audition for 2 parts. And she said, I'll be late to class tomorrow. I have an audition. One was for a doctor, the other was for a mother. And what was interesting is I just gave her a little suggestion, because she said, I'm not quite sure how you do 2 parts. And of course, it's because all these teachers are saying, you're enough. Just play you. Just play it. Just talk. And which makes no sense at all.
Just be natural.
Just be natural. Just be natural. And so I gave her a character trait to consider with the doctor. And then when it came to the mother, I suggested an action. I mean, you know, these are all, or an impulse. I don't like the word action so much. In fact, I hate the vocabulary of acting. I think it confuses actors. But at any rate, and I thought, isn't that interesting that for one part you go for a character trait, another part you go for the impulse the character has towards a partner, and part of acting is figuring out, so what do I need for this part? Which I think is on one hand overwhelming, but on the other hand really kind of fabulous, because it just says, wow, you know, the way that Matthias would approach playing Estragon and Waiting for Godot, say, is going to be different than the way Walker would approach it, because they're different people and they have different access to a character.
I wanted to ask you something
Injustice,
because of
Academy
the-
Award winner. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I didn't know that was
No.
going to start playing. We'll play it later. Let me remove that.
Because I think one of the first things you said, like, that a lot of experienced actors think if they do more scene work, they in workshops, they become better actors. But you actually said, no, it's better to do exercises or go back to sometimes beginner or exercises and work on this, and that this idea of always doing scene work is not really making you a better actor necessarily.
Yes, and of course, if I were to stand up, you would know I know nothing about sports. However, I always think that we should approach acting more like sports people approach sports. There is this feeling among actors, and it's really dangerous, that if you'll just give me a play or just give me a part, you'll see I can act. And I always think to myself, you know, Rafael Nadal didn't just say, give me a tennis racket and let me go out. And I always look at basketball players, and I think, because basketball players it seems like one of those things that, like in parks in New York, you know, guys are always playing basketball. So the feeling is, no, I can play basketball, but to really play basketball is hours of dribbling. I mean, Kobe Bryant said in an interview once that after the game and after the press leaves, he goes back onto the court and practices the things that he missed, or practices the things that he got right to make sure he can get them right again. I think if actors did that, it would be fantastic. I always suggest to actors, if you keep a diary and you have an audition where you say, man, I really killed it, write down why, so that it's not this arbitrary thing. It's funny. Douglas was in class yesterday, and he was asking an actress in class what she learned from having done an exercise correctly. And I thought, that's really it. And so that's the reason I think that if we approached acting like people in sports approach sports, that it would be much more accessible. And I mean, one of the things, I have exercises that people do every day. My student JP was talking to somebody the other day, and he said, every day when I get up, he said, I do a description from nature. I do something I love and something I hate. And it's just like, that's how I wake up. And so it's like, is something you can do every day, and it's constantly feeding your creative impulses and your imagination. And I think that's it. But you're right. There's always this sort of thing. Well, can I do a scene study class? And
it's hard to convince actors to say
oh my
no,
God.
because they so like addicted or think they have this image. I have to do this, or otherwise it's not good. You know, like
I know.
and
No. It's all. Yeah. It's. I think it's the pressure of the time we live in.
Mhm.
I mean, years ago, I had this fascinating life in terms of apartments, but I happened to live in the same building Leonard Bernstein did. And so I knew he was playing Rhapsody in Blue. He was conducting and playing it with the New York Phil. And I thought, and his rehearsal room happened to be in a small apartment on the top floor of this building, which is where I lived in another small apartment. And so I went to, I thought, oh, I'm going to go listen to Lenny play Rhapsody in Blue. And I went, and he was playing scales.
Mhm.
He wasn't playing the piece. He was playing scales, and he was playing stuff that I had done when I was playing piano, like starting out. That's what he was playing. And I thought he really understood it. It wasn't about playing the piece. It was about the technique that he needed to have in order to play the piece. And I find that fascinating. I didn't even know I'd learned that until years later. And then I was reminded of it, and I thought, wow, that's so interesting.
I'm just going to speak for myself, and maybe others can relate. But I know that before I had a process or a way of working, I mean, this was included after college, after NYU drama. I just was flying by the seat of my pants. It was just all instinct. So maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. As you say, if it sucked, I had no idea why. If it was great, I had no idea why. I had no process. But throughout a lifetime of working the same way, which is having no process, you think that is, I thought that was good. And I think you want to feel that, which is maybe just a completely self-absorbed thing. You want to feel like you're acting. So it's like I get that impulse to want to. Oh, I want to do a scene. Well, just let me do a scene. Well, just give me a play, and I'll be great. As opposed to like slowing down to the point where you're just working on this one idea in acting. And mastering that one thing.
I can't think of anything worse. I can't think of anything worse than not having any idea why I was brilliant, to say nothing of not having any idea why I sucked. I mean, I just, that would just be horrifying to me. Because it's like I did this, and it worked. Maybe it didn't work, so maybe I could do something else. I'm always amazed. I mean, and really kind of respect people actors who are specific what their problems are. I mean, I used to say this all the time. If unless you fail in my class, you're not working hard enough. But but I do realize that the confidence comes, and that's what you do in auditions. That's what you do on stage. It's that's what we respond to. Somebody who's confident. And God, there's nothing like it. I mean, I saw Robert Downey Jr. in a play not too long ago, and I thought, bless his heart, he's lost. Because he's used to doing movies. He's used to playing that part. But, you know, he can't really act because he doesn't know how to work. And so, you know, that's kind of scary. Anyway.
Or I admire people who allow themselves to be terrible in rehearsal. Just not have it yet. I mean, you have a story about that, right?
Yes. No, listen, it's so difficult acting. The need to get it right, the need to be good, which is just like plagues everybody. That's why I love, there's a documentary about Tony Kushner who wrote Angels in America, and they had Meryl Streep in rehearsals for Mother Courage, the Brecht play, which Tony Kushner had done an adaptation. And I happened to go on opening night, and it was genius. The script was brilliant. The adaptation was brilliant. She was unbelievable. But when they showed the rehearsals, it's like she was all over the place. I mean, it was like, no wonder she doesn't want people to watch her in rehearsals. It was not good work, and it's because she had the confidence to try things. I think that's the reason I do those exercises, Matthias, and those beginning exercises, because you can do them all. You know, you can do them constantly. You can do the same one every single day and challenge yourself to be brilliant, to challenge yourself to make phenomenal choices. And I mean, I think you have a physiological reaction when you make a good choice. I think your whole body just goes, ooh, I love that. And I think that gives you the confidence. I mean, one should be able to say, oh, I can't wait to audition. You know, I can't wait to audition. I love what I chose. I used to laugh at my brilliant son, Chris Petrovsky, when he was leaving for an audition. And I'd say to him, so now what are you doing? And he'd say, I'm going to show them what they're looking for. And it was slightly arrogant, but the fact of the matter is he managed to often. And it's just because after, 4 years of being beaten to death by me as an actor, he developed confidence, and that's what you want. And that is the reason. It's the reason I say I'd hate to be brilliant and not have any idea why I was brilliant.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, do you mean like a film actor? I mean, coming back to Robert Downey Jr. because I like him.
Oh, I do too. Oh my God, I like him a lot. Okay,
yeah.
But here's the difference.
Is it only the transition to theater which you think
yes.
is?
Yes. Yeah. Here's the difference. I'm never popular when I say this, but I took a famous screenwriting class that everybody takes in America and maybe other places. It's a fabulous weekend with Robert McKee, and so the thing that he said in the first class of screenwriters is, first thing you should do is cast the movie in your head. Now, that's really an interesting note, because if I cast Brad Pitt and Julia Roberts in my head before I start writing, it's because they are each only capable of one performance. So I know what I'm going to do. Same thing with Robert Downey Jr. I know what Robert Downey Jr. can do. Movies are written for Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. doesn't audition. And they write for him because they know what he can do. So, I mean, okay. So what does that have to do with acting? Well, when you're doing a play, there is actually a character. I mean, as far as movies and television, I think they're about plots. And often actors are there as a plot point. And so the challenge as an actor auditioning for TV or film is that you make the plot point interesting, which means the choices you make are interesting choices. And so that is something that is a skill set. It's because you've practiced it. It's because you've done the backhand day in and day out and day out. And then when you get into a tournament and the tennis ball comes over the net and you're going to hit the backhand, you know what you're doing. So you do something I love, something I hate. You do one of these daily exercises. And then all of a sudden you're playing a thug. You're playing the hot guy. You're playing, the hot young attorney. So, but because that particular muscle of yours is attuned to making gifted choices, you suddenly make a kick-ass choice. And so it's a plot point. But then my vision always has been is the writers are sitting in the writer's room and they're the ones who cast. And they go, yeah, wow, that's an interesting scene. But when you're doing movie stars, they're cast first. And the movie is written for what they can do. It's a reason that any acting class that has people use movie scripts is insane to me. Because the scene was written for Julia Roberts. There is no, I'm going to do Pretty Woman better than Julia did. I mean, it was written for her. So it has, it's what she does. Julia Roberts has a quality. Julia Roberts is the sort of person, if I saw her at an airport, I would feel absolutely comfortable going, hey, Julia, because I know she'd smile and wave back. That's what you get. Whereas Angelina Jolie, if I saw her at the airport, I'd go the other way. She doesn't sound like the sort of person that would wave and come back. But I mean, that's the thing. And that's really the difference. Doing a play, and every actor will eventually want to do a play. Because that's the reason Robert Downey Jr. is doing a play. That's the reason all these actors keep going back to the theater, is because that's what tests your abilities as an actor. Because it is a character that was written. And for those of us who go to the theater, it's like, God, I bet I've seen 18 productions of Waiting for Godot, trying to see if I can find one that's better than the ones I directed. And I've directed it 3 times and can't wait to direct it again. Sounds like something maybe we should do in Berlin. But I mean, that's the thing. It's like doing a play requires you to dig into depth because it's a human being on stage. I've always thought we should replace the word character with human being. It's a human being on stage, and a human being is complicated. It's not a plot point on stage. It's a human being. And I think that's the reason acting changed. Acting changed in the late 1800s because the world changed. And we had Mr. Ibsen and Mr. Strindberg and Mr. Chekhov writing human beings. And it scared people. It really, the people on stage were like the people in the audience. And that hadn't happened before. I mean, it really had never happened before. It's not like you and I would go to a production of Hamlet and you'd turn to me and say, oh my God, the same thing happened to me. My uncle killed my father and married my mother. I mean, it's like, nobody's uncle is Richard III. And so, but everybody's mother is Nora. And you know what I mean? It's like we recognize those people. And so that's scary. That's really scary. The first reviews of Ibsen plays, the critics called it an open sore. And the audience was violent about it. It was like, because the people on stage were like the people in the audience. Well, that demand is huge. That's a massive thing to do. And that's a reason it's like, I think, God, there's so much it takes to be brilliant. And I don't know actors who want to be mediocre. I mean, when I used to interview actors for the acting school, Stella School in Los Angeles, and I'd say, what do you want out of acting? And nobody ever said, oh, I just want to be a mediocre actor. They never said that. And they never said, I just want to make money. So, but I mean, it's like, that is something that it takes. That is something that it takes to really dig down and get what's going underneath. And it takes a lot. But I just would add to that, man, if you can do it in a play, then when you get a TV script and it's a plot, then you can really do something with it. I mean, that's what really happens, because your instrument, and it is trainable, your instrument looks for the human being underneath it. And that's what you have trained yourself. That's what you've trained yourself to play as an actor, a human being.
But like, do you think like that? I mean, in the theater sometimes even they also have a shorter time of rehearsals, and it shows sometimes in.
Yes. God, it's impossible. I laughed. I went to a Stanislavski symposium, and they were talking about the Moscow Art Theater. And they said, oh, things have gotten so bad at the Moscow Art Theater that even Sergio only has 7 months to rehearse. And I thought, oh my God, 7 months to rehearse? However does he do it? It's, Yeah, we're up against insurmountable odds, and I think the reason we're up against insurmountable odds is also not just the time, but I just think I don't think we have a lot of really gifted people around us. I mean, I think the the responsibilities on the shoulders of actors. One of the first notes Stella said in one of the first classes I took, script analysis class that I took with her, she said, if you're waiting for the director to help you, you're going to be dead in the water. And I think that's the issue. I think you have to really, really know a lot as an actor. You have to know what you do when you go home at night until tomorrow's rehearsal. You have to have the tools. You have to know how to do script analysis. You know how to build the past of a character. You know what a character trait is, how to build the personality. You know where to go with all of these things. And so that's really the issue. And so, yes. So there's no time, but also there's no one to help you. You know, nobody does table work. They all act like table work is like, ugh, table work. We're going to actually talk about what the play is about. So suddenly you're on your own. You have to be really smart so that you can figure out what the play is about, how your character fits in with what the playwright's trying to say. But it's not just, you know, it's something, it's learnable, but you just have to do it a lot. I mean, I love script analysis. I love sitting and figuring out what a play is about. And because I love it, when I get bad TV scripts for my actors, I love them. I have the most fun. I had one the other day and I thought, somebody actually wrote this. If I'd known that you could write like this and have a career, I would have never given it up. I mean, because what are you talking about? Yeah, exactly. Really? You think so? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's like, and I'm looking, I said, is that it? One day I will do a class in where all we have are bad scripts. That's it.
You could call the class bad scripts.
Yeah, bad scripts. And then everybody comes in and makes a bad script interesting. Anything else, Walker?
Not at the moment. Is there, Matthias, anything else you'd like to cover?
I'm jumping. I mean, like, another thing I think I remember from one of our first conversation was that you said, like, we talked about imagination, and you said not only imagination, but you said educated imagination. I don't know if that right, but I found it an interesting comment, which made me think a lot about imagination. Yeah.
Yes, I happened on that by accident, like so many things that have happened through teaching. But I realized that there was a tendency to think imagination is just imagination. I personally loved Bobby Lewis, but I think the fact that he's said, "What would you do if you were in this circumstance?" was really the wrong way to go, because you would never be in this circumstance. So imagining yourself in this circumstance is ridiculous. And so that's when I happened by accident on the educated imagination, because I thought you have to really, if you're doing the Arthur Miller play, All My Sons, you can imagine certain things. Maybe it's an awfully difficult play, but you have to know a lot. You can't just say, what God, what would I do if my brother died in the war and my mother still thought he was alive? It's like you no amount of 2024 imagination will help you get to that. So that's when you have to really understand certain things about the time you're in, really understand certain things about even imagining. My students always laugh. Periodically somebody will say, and Milton used to lick postage stamps. When I try to explain to them that there was a time when not only was there not voicemail, there weren't answering services. There was a time that if you missed the call, you missed the call, and people called back. There was a time we wrote letters, not emails, not texts, letters. So, I mean, it's like as soon as you start doing that, it's like, oh. So, I mean, that's the thing. And that's difficult for a lot of people to imagine. I was directing a production of Clifford Odets play, Waiting for Lefty at Yale. And this is when I realized the issue, because I taught at Yale about 20 years ago. And so it was right after 2000. And so in the play, Joe, who's a taxi driver, has been driving his taxi all day long. And it's the Depression. It's the 30s. And it's difficult because there's no work and there's no money. And so he comes home and all of his furniture has been repossessed. And so the opening line of the play is, "Where's all the furniture, honey?" And it's just, life is just, and so at any rate, so anyway, I'm talking about the fact that, the wife is there and she gets him to go on strike and gets him to get his buddies. And one of the girls in my class said, whoa, hold on a second. And she said, I mean, man, I got to tell you something. If the guy can't bring home enough money to feed me and my kids, I'm fucking out of here. And that's what I realized. That we have to commit to a time period in order to make these plays work. And also, we have to understand the human being. We have to understand the human being that won't leave her husband. And it's very, very difficult to understand 2024 or 2002, whenever it was I was teaching there. It's very difficult to understand that. Because now, now in America, I don't know how it is in Europe, but in America, more people were divorced in a year than got married. So it's like, so the plot is not going to affect anyone. What is going to affect people are these human beings in this circumstance of struggle. And that's why, as an actor, you do end up with an educated imagination, because you can't use your imagination just arbitrarily using the imagination unless you have this information that you really understand, in a very smart way.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it becomes clear for me when you're thinking that somebody 20 years later would have to play us. You cannot play us in knowing Corona, or here in Germany, the war, Ukraine, like the aggression in Russia towards Ukraine, and then the Middle East, and this all combined. You have to know something about it, because I still feel it's in my body. This whole experiences and what we have going through, and I cannot imagine to play someone not at least try to understand the circumstances of it, what it does to you.
And also, now here's the other thing that's really odd. The fact that we're in this circumstance does not necessarily mean that we can play this circumstance.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I always use the example when I'm teaching in New York. I said, so your play says it's 2024, you're an actor in New York City, and you think to yourself, oh, well, it is 2024. I am an actor and I am in New York City. Next, I can play that. And so this is the other thing, is that we think because we're in that circumstance that we can play that circumstance, and it's because we don't sit back and ask ourselves, so what does that circumstance mean? What is it like?
Yeah.
Well, what is it like to have lived through the coronavirus? I mean, most of us have even forgotten.
Yeah.
Certainly living in New York City, what was it like to be on a bus, a crowded New York bus with only 4 people, all wearing masks? And so,
how would you then, in an exercise, or use your imagination to transfer the facts and the knowledge to get it into your body, the experience?
Well, I mean, that's the technique, isn't it? That's why we're all going to Berlin to figure out how to do that. No, but I mean, that's really it. This question always comes up. Yes, but how do I translate that? I mean, that was the thing. Another thing I got from reading Kazan's diaries. He said all intelligent analysis must be translated into behavior. And I've sort of like adapted it a little bit more for us to say, how do you make that actable? And that is the technique. How do you make that actable? How do you do that? What is the nature of that? And that is the work. That is the work that we do. I mean, I never have enough time. Maybe someday I'll come for a month, but I never have enough time. But there are exercises that I'm dying to do where I say, okay, so I want you to come in hungry, and I don't want you to play a cliche, and I want you to really make me interested. And then it goes back to, so what is doable about that? What is how do I play that? How do I play that? How do I play that so it's not a cliche?
No.
And that's the work. So it's not just it is not just making it believable. It's making it believable and interesting. And most people say, oh, well, yeah, I believed it. I believed he was hungry. He went, oh. And so I said, oh yeah, now he's tired. I mean, when you think about it, it's like, but is that enough? And that I think is all part of it. It's like, it's making a choice that's kick-ass, making a choice that feeds the play you're in, and also, making it good theater. I mean, there's a reason that we can watch Marlon Brando in any movie he did and learn all we need to know about acting. I mean, I still say go watch all. I mean, I say to young actors all the time, watch On the Waterfront.
Mm.
Watch on the watch. Look at how filled it is. But we recognize good acting for a reason. I mean, we do. I was I confess that I don't know, somehow or another I watch Christmas movies. Christmas is a non-existent holiday for me. But at any rate, so I was talking to Amanda in my class, and she said, you can watch The Holiday more than once. But it was so interesting. I was watching Jude Law in The Holiday last night, which is I've decided my favorite Christmas movie. And he was so easy. And it was so pleasant to watch. And, I don't necessarily think Jude Law is one of those actors that people go, ooh, Jude Law. But I was watching him and I thought, God, he's perfect for that part. He's so easy and he's so funny. And I thought it's like he made a choice that he played fully, and it was good theater. And I understood why he became a star.
Mm.
It's like it made sense. There are a lot of good-looking guys. It wasn't just because of that, but he made sense out of the character that he played and made the character enjoyable to watch. And I do think that's part of it. I do think if I enjoy it, if I enjoy playing it, then the audience will enjoy watching me play it.
Mm.
And I think that it's an interesting struggle we have to check off all those boxes. I got the circumstance of the play down, and I have a really interesting character in the circumstance, and I'm living really well in the, it's like, and on top of all of it, that was one of the things when I first started teaching. Stella said, I want you to teach for me. And for anybody who knew Stella, it wasn't like it was a choice. And so I was looking on my notes that I took, and she had said one day in class, develop a sense of good theater. And I was looking and I thought, how the hell do you teach that? I mean, I thought about it. And then I was going through other notes and I thought, instinctively, we have a sense of good theater. Instinctively, if I said to you, tell me 3 things that caught your attention on the street this week, you'd say, well, there was this, and there was the mother who was holding her child. It was freezing cold, and there was a mother who was carrying her child and so then you said to yourself, so why did you notice that?
Mm.
And it's because it was an interesting event. And so then you begin to say, oh, that's it. I do notice good theater on the street. But you know what I mean? It's like there's so many of these exercises, Matthias, that are really geared, they're there.
Mm.
It's one of the reasons that I think Stella's way of working was a very healthy way of working. You didn't go to your past. You didn't have to relive, the death of your dog. You didn't have to do any of that. It's very healthy. You know, you find things that take you out.
And that stuff is in you anyway.
And it is, you just don't know it.
Right.
You know, it just doesn't occur to you.
Yeah, but it's also like we talked about behavior, like the things you get curious about, which you see on the street. It's also connected the event, but the behavior, the specific behavior.
Yeah.
And I mean, you want to create different behavior and not just repeat always your behavior. So
Well, that's it. I mean, that really is it. I mean, God, I'd hate to see my behavior on stage. I mean, I'm certifiable.
I mean, I like watching documentaries, like because I think you can learn a lot.
No question. But you also have to understand something about documentaries. They're edited for highlights. I mean,
Yeah,
and
but
nowadays, I mean, when we did Down and Out in America, the ratio of shooting, the documentary was less than an hour, and we had 21 hours of footage. Well, nowadays you have hundreds because it's video; it doesn't cost anything. And we were shooting on 16 millimeter, and we still had 21 hours. And out of 21 hours, we pulled it down to an hour, less than an hour, 54 minutes. But you see what I mean? And it really is that. It's choices.
yeah.
We sat in the editing room and made choices. And little things that we made. I mean, my God, the last line of Down and Out in America was this woman. Her home had been burned out. She was with her husband and their kids. And it was a documentary on the homeless. And she said, land of opportunity. What opportunity? You tell me. And as soon as she said it, I turned to Lee Grant, the director, and I said, and that's the last line of the documentary. And it was, and it never changed. Because without her knowing it, she had given us the theme. But it's selected.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's selected.
Yeah, but I think documentaries sometimes I find interesting that even someone goes through a very emotional thing, they often do at least 2 or 3 things. It's not just the emotion, but they do certain things, even if it's only tiny things of behavior or activities. And I find that is important to understand.
No, I think Lee Grant was an Academy Award-winning actress. She directed the documentaries I did. And I think because she approached the documentaries from an actor standpoint, she asked actor questions. She asked questions of these people as if she were playing the part.
Okay.
I mean, I did the same thing. I started a documentary on Walker, who found out at the age of 40 that he was what were you?
Donor conceived.
Was donor conceived. And then so he was going to, he unbelievably found out who the donor's family were. And his father had died of AIDS in the 90s. And so he was going to meet them. And it was really interesting because I had my son, the actor, do the interview, because I knew he would approach it as if he were playing Walker. And he would ask Walker questions and ask the people questions that, I mean, Walker was asking them questions. I had Walker, in fact, interview his parents, but it was interesting because it's just like you knew that an actor playing Walker would want to know the answer to certain questions. And so, you know, that's it. I think, you know, actors are superior people when they're not because at our very best, we do understand human beings. And at our best, we are trying to have a human being in a moment of conflict. And we're watching how this human being responds in this moment of conflict. And that's what we relate to. That's what we as an audience do. If when we're successful as actors, and I've said this to actors before, if the audience leaves and comments on your performance, the play is a failure. If they leave the play talking about what the play is about, then it's a success, because what you've done is managed to capture who this human being is. And we respond to other human beings. And that's really our job.
This is a good one. Can you discuss how plays are heightened, but average realistic behavior from people on any normal day is not what plays are about, and why trying to be realistic can be a trap?
Okay, so realism is not being realistic. Here's the issue. It is selected. I mean, it is selected. People on stage in a play do not talk the way real people do. The writer has selected it. It's very interesting. Years ago, I saw a lecture by Arthur Miller. And you'll know how long ago it was because of Arthur Miller's comment. And Mr. Miller said to this room full of playwrights, you may not know what the theme of your play is when you start. But once you figure it out, type it on a piece of paper, on a strip of paper, and tape it to your typewriter, and make sure everything you write feeds into it. So first of all, I thought it was a good note for actors. You may not know what the play is about when you start. You may respond to the character, you may respond to something else, you may respond to the plot, who knows? But there's a point when you figure out what the play is about, then you want everything you choose as an actor to feed into what it's about. But that's the important thing to understand. The writer has already selected it. The writer is not writing conversation. That's one of the things that makes writing so bad these days. Somebody told writers that they should just write conversation. And so, I mean, so of course it's uninteresting, because I don't go to the theater to watch people just talk. I mean, that's why it can be a trap, because you think, oh, just talk the way people talk. But it's not. People don't talk the way that they talk. Nobody talks the way they do in All My Sons. So. All right, I think we've
all right,
we've done it.
Yes, you will be in Berlin. Shall I play this little short video?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Yes, if you want.
Yeah. All right. The
We went to
podcast
you
I Don't
went-
Need an Acting Class will be returning to Berlin this spring with his Stella Adler Technique Masterclass.
Love those people.
Will clearly have a past. And you want to own all of them. Because that's the richness. That gives you the richness of the part. Being able to access the character, being able to access the circumstance of the play, being able to access the action they're playing is what the technique is about.
I knew he was giving us the tools to do it on our own. And those tools that he gave me, I've used in my career. I've used on stage in London, on stage in New York, I've used in television and in film.
Honey, there are no cigarettes.
Is this right? Working with Milton is incredible. He has this way of understanding each one of the characters as if it was himself.
Milton was able to find the right vocabulary for me at the time to make me understand the scene in the simplest way possible, to not overcomplicate it.
You have to do it out loud, you have to work on it, you have to improvise it. You find that exactly that thing with auditions, you can't wait to get to the audition. And I know something nobody else knows. You know for a fact nobody else going into this audition has any idea what they're doing because they memorized the words and tried to figure out how to say the words intelligently. When I find what's going on, now I'm confident. The purpose of the technique is to give you confidence. If I know what's going on, then I'm confident. Didn't I just make acting sound so easy? You just wanted to die. It's just like it's now so clear and so easy. Oh, that's it, and then I can walk into the room.
This 2-week intensive will take place at Schott Acting Studio in Berlin, April 14th to the 26th, 2025. Click the link to register. Haha. The link I put in the chat if you'd like. So, well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yes, good. I'm sure we cleared up acting today, Matthias.
Do you think like? I think we're just starting. I'm like.
I know. It is interesting how it just goes on and on and on and on, year after year after year. We still don't figure it out. I'm reminded that Stanislavski was in rehearsals when he died, and he was still trying to figure it out. So I guess maybe that's what we'll be doing as well.
I think that's the most important also as a teacher, that you still have so much to learn and figure out with each new group of students. You discover new things.
Yeah,
it's not a fixed knowledge you have, or each exercise can become completely different, and you can learn something through a certain combination of students or actors you're working with.
Yeah, it keeps it really interesting.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
All right. I will see you.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.